Hour. We have Phil Trowbridge. Phil is the manager of the Land Resource Management in the Water Division at the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Phil's a professional engineer and is kind of, I would say, the one of, if not the leading authority at the state on if you have questions on septic, shoreland, um, wetlands, water quality. Phil is your guy, and David Aiton is the environmental program manager at the subsurface division at the Department of Environmental Services. So, thank you guys and welcome. And I turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. I was going to do a very short intro and introduce David, and then David would take over with the slides. So, uh, th- um, the intro I would give to this is that this is the Association of Realtors, and so we thought about the interest of the realtors in this presentation. The value of waterfront real estate is strongly affected by the water quality of New Hampshire's lakes and rivers. And septic systems are important to that equation because failed septic systems can contribute to water quality problems such as cyanobacteria and algae blooms. A new law was passed in 2024 to require that septic systems be evaluated during a waterfront property transfer and replaced if found to be in failure. It's a relatively simple concept, but it ended up to be kind of difficult to implement because of the complexity and the diversity of real estate transactions and properties. And the department has worked on rules and processes for this to try and handle all of these different situations. So this presentation will walk you through the requirements and starting with the very basics, but then get into some of the details. And then we're going to have time at the end, about 30 minutes or so, for your questions about this process, as well as anything you wanted to ask regarding septic systems, but were afraid to do so. So Dave and I are here. Dave is really the expert in septic systems, and but we will answer your questions as best we can. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Dave, and for the presentation.
All right. So asking any questions about septic system, that is a tall order. So Phil's kind of setting me up for failure right off the bat, right off the bat. So let me just get this going and get moving. All right. So as Phil said, my name is Dave Aiton. I work for NHDES, in particular the Subsurface Systems Bureau. Just a fancy word for we do septic systems and subdivisions, and I do compliance and outreach. So this one kind of covers me for both things, and we're here just to give you like a quick overview about like what a septic system is, and then in particular RSA 485 A39 and how we're handling that. So here's my contact information. I know I've spoken to many realtors, so if you guys have questions, you can always give me a call. I don't always have the answer, but I do try and get back to you guys when I actually find the one I have a good answer for you. So let's get started. So what is a septic system? So a septic system is going to be a wastewater disposal or treatment system that receives domestic sewage. For the purposes of permitting, NHDES refers to septic systems as individual sewage disposal systems, or ISDS. So if you take a look at one of our approvals, either an approval for construction or an approval for operation, you're going to see ISDS. One thing I do want to point out, and it's going to come into play more when we get into the 485A39, even though it says individual sewage disposal system, if you're using a shared septic system, they're still considered an ISDS. So I know that some people get hung up on that word. Basically, if you're not tying your wastewater into a municipal sewer system, you're more than likely tied into an ISDS. So just something to keep in mind. Our authority comes from RSA 485A, particularly sections 29 through 44, and then our rules are going to be in ENVWQ 1000. So if you're trying to get to sleep one night and you're bored, I'd recommend looking at that stuff. Just it'll definitely help you get to sleep a little early. So what is a septic system? So we're going to take a look at the top-down view. You're going to have a structure. Between the structure and your septic tank, you're going to have a sewer pipe. Wastewater is going to flow from your sewer outlet into your septic tank. And then from there, you're going to get solid settling down. And then effluent is going to be like the liquid part. That's going to move on to your effluent disposal area. If everything's working right, the only thing that you may see other than the mound for the leach field would be your access covers for your septic tank if you see those. So everybody can hear me. I just want to make sure. Okay, not awesome. All right. So how does the septic system work? So we're looking at this in profile now. So your wastewater is going to be discharged through your sewer outlet. It's going to enter into your septic tank. And like I said, septic tank's super important because it really starts the process of settling your solids down, and then your lighter than water stuff like grease and oils, they're going to float to the top, and then out of the outlet baffle, which is, you can see we've got, it almost looks like a periscope. We're trying to get that like Goldilocks layer of effluent. It will be the only thing that gets to pass to the leach field, and then you're going to flow again, using really technical terms, effluent pipe into your distribution box or D box, and then into your effluent disposal area, aka the leach field. What you're going to find is we tend to use some rather complicated terms rather than the common ones, so effluent disposal area instead of leach field. So when it comes to approvals, this is another thing that I think a lot of people have just some difficulty understanding. New Hampshire has required state-issued septic system approvals since 1967 for areas that are within 1,000 feet of surface waters, and since 1971 for the remainder of the state. So if you're dealing with a structure that's been built, after those times, it should have a state-approved septic system that goes with it. And then the Subsurface Systems Bureau, and we're just going to use the acronym of SSB. We've got two steps when it comes to the approval process. There's an approval for construction issued by plan review staff after they've reviewed the plan and the application, and then the approval for operation that's issued by our inspection staff after the installation of the system, but before it gets backfilled. So both approvals are required before the septic system can be put into use. And that's another thing that people don't always understand. If you don't have an approval for operation, the system should not have been put into use. Approvals for operations are linked to the approval for construction, and they're going to share the same approval number. So the only time that you're going to see a difference really is if you're taking a look at some of the paperwork. At the top, they're going to say approval for construction or approval for operation, but they're both going to have the same approval number. So, septic system maintenance. By law, owners are required to maintain septic systems, including replacing it when it fails. That's actually in the RSA 485A37. Septic systems are designed for domestic wastewater, so users need to be mindful of what is being flushed or poured down the drains. So that's something people just need to understand. It's not a garbage disposal, right? You should not be dumping hazardous chemicals down there. It messes up the biology of the system, and if you want to not have to replace a system, you want to make sure that you're maintaining it right. So water softening devices should also not be directed to the septic system unless they are designed for it. please keep in mind that most systems aren't. So water softening devices have a large volume discharge that gets dumped into the leach field all at once. It's typically some sort of a salty or a briny discharge, and that can also mess around with the chemistry of your septic system. And then generally, septic systems are really the only thing that people need to be doing is getting the septic tank pumped by a licensed septic hauler every 2 to 5 years. So can't be doing them themselves unless they are a hauler. Go out there, get that person. It's pretty good insurance doing that. If there is a problem, sometimes the pumper will be able to notice it and give somebody the heads up, so that way it doesn't develop into something that needs to be completely replaced. And this is going to definitely come into play for smaller lots, especially shoreland ones. You're going to see things that are called pre-treatment systems. So it'll be a tank that is downstream of your standard septic tank. Those systems require regular maintenance by certified technicians as required by the manufacturer. So they may be coming out like once or twice a year. A lot of those systems require blowers, things like that. It's a little bit more maintenance, so they need to be checked to make sure that they are working correctly. So, all right, the main meat of why we're here: the transfers of developed waterfront property with on-site septic systems. So, RSA 485A39 went into effect September 1st of 2024. So we're creeping up on 2 years at this point. That law replaced the waterfront site assessment with a septic system evaluation for real estate transfers of developed waterfront properties. To be subject to the law, the property must be currently developed, located within the protected shoreland, and served by a septic system at least partially sited within 250 feet of the reference line. So one of the questions that has popped up is, this lot was developed, but there's no longer a structure on the property. You would now be out of the jurisdiction of this law. So it has to meet these 3 criteria for you to be having to move forward with what we're going to talk about. So buyers can avoid evaluations by agreeing to replace the system within 180 days after the property transfer. Buyers doing this need to submit the individual sewage disposal system buyer's declaration for septic system repair or replacement to NHDES, as well as notifying the local health officer before the property transfer. So I think we're going for a record on titles of our forms. You'll see another one. We got another long one. Phil really likes the long titles, so it really makes it stand out for that kind of stuff. So it needs to be done before the property transfer. If the buyer decides that they want to have if they're not going to replace the septic system right off the bat, they need to have a septic system evaluation performed by a licensed septic system evaluator. Additionally, for systems that were approved before September 1st of 1989 or do not have a state-approved system, the buyer must also engage a permitted septic system designer to confirm that there's adequate separation distance between the bottom of the leach field and the seasonal high water table. So for older systems or systems that never got that state approval, so we're looking at, in this case, something that was designed probably before 1967 or did not get state permits when it was put in, you have that second step. So like I said, the evaluator is always going to be required. This is a second step in addition to the evaluator under these circumstances. So the seller can have an evaluation done in preparation for the transfer, but it must be done within 180 days of the transfer, and the buyer is not obligated to accept it. So seller can get it prepped and ready to go. Hopefully they're going to sell it within 6 months of whenever that happens, but the buyer does not have to do that, does not have to accept it. So some stuff that as realtors you may want to get some answers from the owner. Do they know anything about the existing septic system, including if it was state approved? It's just a great thing to know if it's not on your checklist already. If the owner does not have that information, you can go to our website. In particular, you want to go to the one-stop section. We are digitizing all of our paper files, so they are relatively complete. I don't know where we are in that process. Additionally, you may want to check with the town offices, in particular, the building department or the department that has the building files, depending on the town. Doing this, you may need to research through the town and the registry of deeds a chain of ownership. So depending on when the structure was built, you're going to, or if it was built before 67, you may need to do like I said, a chain of ownership going back to that point. So that way you can try to figure out who owned the property when a septic system application would have been submitted. Next, does the approved use match the current use? Always something good to have, so that way people understand, if something was done potentially without a permit, whether or not they're going to have, where they're going to be if they go to develop property. And then, is any part of the system within the limits of the protected shoreland or 250 feet of the protected water body? So having this, especially if you can find an older, like a copy of the plan, it's going to be really good in understanding whether or not you need to get the evaluation done or not. So, and it's just good information to have for the buyer. All right, so what is a septic evaluation? So to meet the requirements of 485A39, the evaluation needs to be done by a licensed septic evaluator. They're an entity that is licensed. It's not through DES. It's actually through OPLC. So we don't have any kind of jurisdiction with them, and we don't have much information other than what's in the RSA and in their rules as far as what the evaluation does. So I can't get into it too deep. The evaluation will need to meet their requirements, which is RSA 310-A, as well as their rules, which is SEP 100 through 700. Prior to the inspection, the evaluator may request information about the system, including if they have a copy of the septic plan, any kind of pumping records, as well as building fixtures. Again, this is why it's good to have that information. We went in the previous slide. And then the on-site evaluation will require access to the basement if possible, as well as the septic tank and leach field. The leach field may be probed with hand tools. So there's a range of tools that the evaluators have. Some of them actually have cameras that they can snake through the lines to get a better feel of what's going on in the inside. But like I said, it's a real range of what's going to be required for that. And then what is the designer determination? So what's the designer doing here? The bed bottom needs to be done by a permitted septic system designer. So some evaluators are also designers, but they are not the same thing. And when it comes to this part, they're looking at two separate things. So the designer is going to be trying to make the determination if the leach field meets the required separation distance between the bed bottom and the seasonal high water table. Now, seasonal high water table, especially because we're talking about areas that are near water, that's not necessarily like the water level of that water body. Sometimes it can be, but it's a different thing. So a lot of people have that question about like, well, I'm 20 feet above the lake or the river. Why am I getting this done? Not quite the same thing. The determination will require access to the leach field and the surrounding area, more than likely by some form of excavation equipment. So they're going to be digging, more than likely be digging a test pit. And to do that, a lot of the times they're going to need a trench so that way they can see the soil horizons to make that determination. So when that heavy equipment is required, there may be some ground disturbance to and around that test pit area. So just something for the buyer to realize that in order for them to buy the property, they need to have this done, and there may be some disturbance. Hopefully, the excavation equipment can keep it to a minimum. So, good news. What happens if there are no issues? If there are no issues or signs of failure, the RSA does not require anyone to be notified. So, everything's in the green here. Evaluators should check with the municipality to confirm that there are no additional local requirements. We do not keep track of local septic system requirements. My understanding, based on contact with some town officials, some homeowners, is that a lot of municipalities are either incorporating this or this rule or something similar to it. So we should just make sure to, dot your I's and cross your T's and make sure everything is going to be okay along with the town. I would also suggest that buyers retain a copy of their report just in case there are any other questions in the future. But that's just kind of common sense, but something to do. So, bad news. What happens if there is a failure? So, if they choose to proceed with the sale, the buyer is going to have 180 days from the day of closing to repair or replace the septic system. If there are circumstances beyond the control of the buyer, they're going to have to request an extension. It is going to be up to 180 days. So, if the designer has determined that the leach field has failed, it may not be used until the repair or replacement has been made. All right. So now we're coming back to, if we've got a failed septic system, we don't want to continue the use of that system until it's actually been repaired. And then this is where the local health officer is going to come in to be involved at their discretion. A septic tank can be pumped instead of vacating the structure or disconnecting it from the septic system. So there is that. So is everybody here is still able to hear me? We're good? Can I get awesome? Saw somebody nod, so I'm going to take that. All right. What is the notification process? If the buyer is just going to replace the septic system, so they're avoiding both of the evaluations, they need to complete, again, the ISDS buyer's declaration for septic system repair or replacement. Otherwise, if the evaluator's done it, otherwise the buyer authorizes the evaluator to notify DES and the local health officer. And then the evaluator is going to complete the licensed septic system evaluator report of observations for septic system evaluation. Like I said, we're going for the longest titles here, as long as we possibly can. And then forms currently can be emailed to me at SSB Compliance, or they can be mailed. The mailing address is on there. Eventually, we're going to get all of this stuff in electronically, but we're not quite there yet. So, where can you find some more information? I would suggest going to the general court website and actually taking a look at the RSA itself, which is 485A39. SSB also has fact sheet SSB 14, transfers of waterfront properties with septic systems in the protected shoreland. We will be revising this relatively soon. I know we've got something that's we've got one up now. The revisions are kind of minor, but we do have links to the new forms. If you're really interested, you can also take a look at the Subsurface Bureau rules, which are ENVWQ. We do have some clarification in those rules to address situations that are not clearly defined in the law. And then, in case you guys have suggestions, comments, questions, you can always email me at my David R. Aiton at des.nh.gov. And then finally, I just wanted to say thank you. Really appreciate you guys listening to me, taking the time to learn a little bit more about this. All right.
Dave, do you want to answer any questions? There's been a bunch of questions in the chat, or do you
Sure.
want
Yeah.
them to reach out to you?
How long do we have? Well, that
Yeah.
went pretty well.
Well,
So we got plenty of time. If Phil's good, we can try answering.
yeah. Yeah, I think we could try answering them. I don't know if you have a list. I've been jotting down the
I
questions
do.
in the chat. I attempted to answer one, but there were too many to keep answering in the chat.
Okay, who is enforcing the law is one of them.
So who is enforcing the law? So when it comes to septic systems, especially failed septic systems, you're going to see both DES and the health officer, the local health officer here. So it's going to be a combination of things. A lot of the times, when it comes to failed septic systems, we are going to hand that more to the local health officer, because if you take a look at RSA 147, they're allowed to do a lot more things in a quicker manner than we are. So it's going to be a combination, but generally, if the septic system is failed, the health officer is going to be the one that's going to bring the owner into compliance with that.
Okay, and and the other next part to that question is, what responsibility does the listing agent or buyer's agent have when people are refusing the evaluations?
I don't have an answer.
Okay.
That sounds like a realtor legal question, so I can't get into that.
Okay, is the bed bottom test required only for systems installed prior to 9/1/89 or for all systems?
No, it's going to either be systems that got an approval before September 1st of 89, or we can't find an approval for.
Okay. Are cesspools exempt or is replacement required?
Cesspools are automatically failed. There is no such thing as a grandfathered cesspool. They are failed because they actually meet the definition of failure in RSA 485A2. They don't provide any treatment before they discharge into the water table. So if you've got a cesspool, it's going to be replaced right off. It's going to fail automatically.
Okay. Whoops, go
But
ahead.
don't confuse a cesspool with a system that has a septic tank and a dry well. So some people fall under that stuff, but like I said, if your wastewater is discharging directly into the cesspool, that is a cesspool. If you've got a septic tank and a dry well, that's not the same thing. So just want to make sure people understand that difference.
Okay. How is this handled for winter sales when system is difficult to inspect?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things they could, like I said, if you're either, the law requires it to be done, period. So that's like if you know in advance of the winter that you're looking at doing this, the seller does have that ability to get the evaluation done before. Otherwise, if that did not happen, the law requires this to be done before the sale. So it may be that they're like, if we really want to move forward with the sale, we're going to replace the septic system. But once you do that, you're doing that. There's no way around it.
Incinerators, are they option to a traditional septic?
So we get this question a lot. So the question that I always have when people ask this is, are you going to have running water to the structure? If you're going to have running water to the structure, you need to have a septic system, period. An incinerating toilet can be used in addition to a septic system if you want to, when you have running water. But the only way you could have an incinerator only would be no running water to the structure.
If a family cottage is being transferred within the family, do they still need to have the evaluation?
So the law specifically calls out buyers and sellers. So if they can do it without any transfer of money, then they would not be subject to this, right?
Okay. And I think you answered this one, but is there a time frame as to when this can be done by the seller before the sale of the house?
It just 180 days. There is the ability to put it. I think it's an additional 180-day extension. So if the seller goes and has that stuff done before and has it in their pocket, you could get close to a year potentially with that.
Why is it that in a condo development, each unit has to have a new evaluation?
Because there's nothing in the law for that speaks to condominiums explicitly. So if you've got a shared septic system, there's no waivers or anything else. This is written into the law. Unfortunately, the law doesn't speak to shared systems in particular, so there's no way for us to have an exemption or anything for that.
Where can you find if the property is in a protected shoreland? Is there a link to this to be able to search a property address?
Yep. So I would recommend going to that fact sheet. So if you go to our website, which is des.nh.gov, inside that you're going to see like a search this website, but text field, type SSB-14. It's going to come up right off the bat. We have links to the list of consolidated water bodies, as well as the LRM permit planning tool, and you can turn on layers inside that. In that tool, you can actually zoom right to an address, turn on the shoreland layers, and see if you're within that area too. So we do have some stuff out there.
Okay, we're getting close. We're almost done. Please refresh my memory in general. Any septic repairs, replacements fall under the purview of DES versus the municipality?
It could be both. So there could be a lot of towns do have permits for their stuff. So you're going to have to reach out to whatever that municipality is. But so if you're doing any kind of replacement or repair work inside the leach field, it's definitely going to require a permit from us. And if you've got to replace the septic tank, it may require a permit from us as well. So there's some caveats to that. If you have questions, reach out to a permitted septic system designer. They should be able to point you in the right direction.
So is a dry well considered as a leach field?
Sure. Yep. Dry wells are a type of leach field. Dry wells are tall, so they generally there's not that many soils that will accept them easily. But yeah, dry wells, when they're downstream of a septic tank, are an acceptable thing. If you have no septic tank between the dry well and the house, you have a cesspool.
If a property is within 250 feet of protected water, but it's not waterfront property, do they need an evaluation? And does the septic system need to be within the 250 feet, or is it the property line?
Yep. So the protected shoreland is 250 feet, and it counts towards properties that don't have direct waterfront access. So if you're within 250 feet, but you still do not have direct access to the water, you could still fall under the rest of it, as long as you're, again, developed and the part of your septic system is within 250 feet of that water body.
Final question. It says, somebody just popped one in. Hold on. Is this only restricted to certain bodies of water?
Yep. So like I said, we'll go back to that list of consolidated water bodies. I think it is, and I'm not an expert, but it's ponds or lakes that are 10 acres or greater, and then fourth order or greater streams. Again, I would point you back to the list, as well as the LRM permit planning tool. They should have that information on there.
All right, so this really is going to be the last one. Some dry wells sewer used for washing machines and gray waters, are they legal?
So gray water, if it was a strict gray water system, they do not need to be evaluated. However, gray water if you look at our definition of gray water would be things other than toilet, urinals, and showers. So you got to watch that. So if any of that stuff is being discharged into that, they're no longer a gray water system.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So
That's it.
I have a question.
Oh.
Sorry, can I jump in?
Yes.
All the other questions done? So just so I'm clear and everyone's clear, so if I am the owner of the property and anticipating selling, I can hire an evaluator to conduct an evaluation of my own system and then provide that to a buyer within 180 days, is it?
yep.
It's still valid. And the buyer has a choice to accept it or they could not accept it, right? Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
Yes, that's what the RSA says. Yep.
So if I am in a condominium unit, I'm kind of a part owner of that condominium. So if I have access to someone else 2 months earlier had sold theirs and had done an evaluation, I have access to that evaluation. Wouldn't that suffice as long as it's again within the 180 days?
So you would really want to speak to the evaluator that did the work. I've noticed on some of the reports that I've seen that they are saying that they are non-transferable. So you would need to reach out to that evaluator, whoever did that evaluation, to make sure that they are giving the next entity the permission to do that.
So Phil, as we have this conversation in front of everybody, we should probably have a conversation about that in terms of how best to move forward, and maybe that's a tweak to the law moving forward in some manner.
Yeah, certainly. We certainly welcome any kind of ways that we can make it clearer how to handle the shared systems. That was not something we anticipated when we were preparing this law.
I don't know. I don't know if Tara, if additional questions just popped up. I can't quite.
I think if not waterfront property within septic system, nope. So if they are not transferable, if a buyer has one done on a property, does that mean if the transaction falls apart, you may need to have another one done?
Yeah, again, you'd need to speak to the evaluator. Like I said, I did notice that on some. So generally, I don't want the reports myself, but when they have been submitted to me and I get a chance to look through them, like I said, there are some evaluators that say, no, you cannot transfer them. So you would have to reach out, like I said.
Great. We're all set.
Tara, if I could just add, I noticed a few comments that were related to the records that are available through the state. I could try and clarify those. One person was asking how to find the records that we have for septic systems, and there is a one-stop query on our website. And if anyone's used it, I'd say one of the tips we give people is you don't put in the exact street address, you just put in the street name, and you'll get then a list of septic systems for that area, and then you can select the one that makes sense. That the query seems to work better that way. So it's just a little inside tip on how to use that query.
You guys
system.
want me to demo that? I can pull up I'll share my screen again if you guys want. We can do that.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Give me 1 second. All right. So let me just make this big. Oh man. All right. Give me 1 second because the Zoom thing is blocking my view here. So can you guys see my mouse, my cursor?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So if you're looking at this on a normal computer, like a desktop or a laptop, you're going to want to click right at the top between the two logos. There's a link here that says One Stop. Let me see if you guys don't mind. So you're going to want to click on that One Stop. From there, you're going to want to scroll down. We have a link that says Septic Systems. You're going to want to click on that. And then you're going to be given two options, the application status query and the designer and installer query. So we're going to want to click on that top one. All right. So from here, and as a designer that used this website for at least 10 years, I didn't read the actual text here. read the text because it actually helps a heck of a lot. What it does is it describes the use of the wild card, which is the percent sign. So if you use, all right, let's see. I'm trying to think. Let's go to a town. We'll go to Bartlett. Let me think of some of the roads in Bartlett. Let's say we wanted to find, we were looking for a piece of property in Bartlett. I'm trying to think of, does anybody familiar with Bartlett? Can they give me a road?
Bear Notch Road, maybe?
Yeah, we'll try Bear. Let's see if there's anything with the road name that has the word Bear in it. So under site street address, I started with a percent sign, and then I typed Bear, and let's see what we get. Yeah, so you can see in our database for the whole town of Bartlett, these are all of the plans that we have where the street address has the word Bear in it. So this can be pretty useful. What you're going to find is, let's say you've got a piece of property and it's 120 Bear Notch Road currently. When the application was put in, especially if it was a new subdivision, it may not have had a street address assigned to it. So, like I said, using general searches, it gives you a broader net, but you're going to have to do a little bit of legwork to figure out where some of these match up. Sometimes it's useful, and we'll go back. Sometimes, it's if the tax map and lot number hadn't changed, those are also really good resources. Again, if you've gone through the chain of ownership and figured out who would have owned the property when that building was constructed, the owner last name is also very good too. So I'd recommend doing broad searches. You're going to probably end up with more results and you're going to have to go through them. But when you're very specific, if it doesn't match exactly, it doesn't show up. Okay.
Dave, could you also show them how to use the the LRM permit planning tool?
Sure, I could. This one's
And,
good.
and,
All right.
and this is how you'd find out if you're in a protected shoreland area.
All right. So first, I'm just gonna, if you follow the link in the SSB fact sheet, you're gonna see the list of water bodies. So you can actually look here, and I'll zoom in. We'll go to Hopkinton. You can see over on the left, you've got your rivers and streams. Over on the right, you've got your lakes and your ponds. One thing I would keep in mind is sometimes you're going to find water bodies, especially like smaller lakes and ponds that are named differently than may show up here. So you want to check that. A lot of these names I think they come from either the USGS name, but you may want to check with the town, to make sure that there are no other names for that water body. And then, all right, I'm going to go in. Of course, I moved this stuff yesterday. So the LRM permit planning tool is another device. So does anybody want to give me an address? I'll type it in. Anything. I will use DES's Concord office. So
No,
29. No.
Here's one. Here, why don't you try this one, Dave? 6 Guile Road in Ossipee.
6 Kyle Road. All right, so I know where that is. So let's see. Sometimes it takes a little while. Here we go. There we go. 6 Kyle Road, Ossipee. So we click on that. It's going to zoom in. All right. So we may not have something that is specific, but all right, Cleveland Beach. So why don't we zoom in? Let me see, where are we? Okay, I know where we are. So let's say let's say we were looking at this property. We're going to go up, and this is not the most straightforward, so even I get confused with this, and I may struggle here. So we're going to go up. We're going to want to make sure we're in the wetlands theme up top. We're going to go under the layer list over on the left. Under base layers, we're going to click on shoreline jurisdiction. And you can see now it is turned on that, like where these lots are blue, are going to be the area where you're going to fall under the shoreline jurisdiction. All right.
Yeah. So then this would be one of the criteria, and the other criteria is is any part of the septic system within 250 feet
Right.
of the shoreline.
Yep.
So
And you can see
those properties that are fully blue, obviously, if they have a septic system, they're in. But some of the ones that are partially blue might not be, because if their septic system was beyond that area, then that wouldn't. Correct, Dave?
Yep. Yeah. And I think, and give me a second. I think if we go to, I can't remember where the aerial, we can actually turn on, I think we can turn on the aerial imagery here too. This is, like I said, oh no, it's over here. Here we go. Base map. I'm going to turn on, do we have a hybrid? And I apologize. The Zoom stuff keeps getting in the way here. So we'll use the hybrid stuff. And here you can see, let me turn the shoreline stuff off. That's what it looks like aerial. And then when we turn that shoreline jurisdiction back on, you can get a good sense of that overlay too. All right. So maybe in the future we'll have something that'll be a little bit easier just for the shoreline stuff, but for right now, that's how to get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
All right. I've been talking for a very long time, so I apologize that you had to listen to me for so long, but hopefully you learned something. And like I said, if you have any other questions that pop up, I do respond to emails and phone calls. Sometimes I'm busy with other stuff, but I do try and get back to you guys that same day.
Nice work, Dave. And I know it was recorded, so Bob and Tara, I don't know if there's going to be distributed for anyone else to watch or to have as a resource.
Absolutely. We're going to share
Yeah.
it with the full membership. And Tara, do we have any other questions? Are we good?
We do have one. We have, with the new bylaws, are there properties that are now uninhabitable with regards to the specific being unable to be mediated?
I think that means septic, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I think that's a very general question. If there's a grandfathered use, then obviously that use can continue. Our laws always allow that. Laws and rules always allow that. So there's no way that an occupied property becomes uninhabitable.
Okay.
And then lots of record are allowed to have up to 300 gallons per day for their designs. So there's lots of ways that make properties still inhabitable.
Great. And I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. And Phil and David, I appreciate it. I know I have one other topic that I got, since we have a couple of minutes here. I know it's not your bailiwick, but big change with DES last year had to do with boathouses and allowing those boathouses to be built over public waters. In the past, they were always sort of restricted to dug-in basins. And that's kind of changed now with new statutory and regulatory requirements of DES. And it's almost flipped now. DES is encouraging over the water as opposed to dug-in basins, excuse me. So there are some other requirements. This is in RSA 42A26, if anyone is interested. And there are requirements. Maximum height is 18 feet. There's no second floor, so boathouses have to be just one level. So that was also sort of a change with the ES that you should be aware of. And I don't know if
Right.
Phil or David has any comment on that.
Sure. I mean, I can just provide some of the context for it. We're an environmental agency. We've been charged with regulating docks and structures over waters, just as because that's where the statute lies with us. Arguably, there's less environmental impact if you're going to have if you need to have a permanent structure, to have it be, just put a roof over a permanent dock as opposed to digging into the shoreline to create a dug-in boathouse. So that's, eventually we had some changes in the interpretation of the law relative to this from the Attorney General's office, which allowed us to make this change. I think the thing I would like people to understand about it is that the prerequisite is that you need to have a permanent structure for your docking needs. And that is, you have to have wave height and wave action that would make a seasonal dock unworkable. Or you need to be on a island or something where you need to have a dock to land on when you come back in the spring. So it doesn't mean that you can build a boathouse wherever you want. You first need to have the conditions that require the need for a permanent structure. We think that this ultimately fits better with the avoidance and minimization requirements of the wetlands law, that you avoid and minimize your impacts as much as possible. But once you've met the criteria that you need a permanent structure, what's the difference if you put a roof over it? I guess was our attitude, was that it's there's no environmental impact beyond that. So that's just, I'd say, a little bit deeper description of the change in the law and the regulations that accompany it.